I started my process with some in-depth research. For example, Let's Learn Eurorack by Red Means Recording and Making Music with VCV by Ryan Murgatroyd were both very helpful tools to help me start my own rack. The first step I took in VCV was setting up the basic fundamentals that let me connect all my sounds in a generative format, ever-changing and random. My research guided me to end up using different clock settings to connect my modules and still keep the diversity of speed, but also keeping them in time with one another. In the early stages, I was aiming for my first sound to fill the low end of the stereo field with dreamy and processed chords, as I thought this would be an effective foundation to my patch. The bass-filled chords in Headlock by Vowel was used as inspiration in the creation of my first module. Firstly, I used the macro oscillator in chord mode and an attenuator to set my preferred range of chords. This was followed by the tidal modulator, so I was able to manipulate the shape of the sound even more. The module randomizer was implemented so the module would continuously create different patterns of the chords to keep this generative idea. Scopes were used to be able to see more clearly what signal was being processed. Then I added reverb via auxiliary sends on the mixer to finalize my ambient and dreamy module 1. Module to have a rich string-like sound. The main modules I used to design the sound was a resonator, macro oscillator, quantizer, fill-line and LFO. The fill-line in particular was very useful to mold my sound, as I could edit the resonance and frequency cutoff point. Furthermore, a sequencer programmed by a slower clock ratio as to my first module was applied so I could gate the sound to only play every 2 bars. This was to make a range in speed, so this module was ever-changing. A randomizer and random sampler was used. I also added reverb with the octave triggered by a VCA, which gave the module a glitchy after effect. My third module's purpose was to be a melody with plucky notes, as I thought it would fill the mid-range of the stereo field quite nicely. I had the instrument, banjo, in my mind from the inspiration of Dueling Banjos by Eric Weisberg and Steve Mandel. The initial sound was sculpted with a resonator and tidal modulator. Side note, I found the resonator extremely useful with the different settings you can change. I selected sympathetic strings for this resonator in Module 3. I implemented a randomizer and clocked gate sequencer to control the timing of this module. However, I created a new clock mod for this sound so it was slower than Module 1 but not as slow as Module 2. I think this makes it sound more intertwining and complex. Lastly, I designed patterns on the digital sequencer and quantizer to create a melody note progression. This helped achieve the plucky banjo effect combined with the shaping of the sound. The last module was designed to sound like a hi-hat, and I succeeded by using the macro oscillator in analog hi-hat setting, and I clocked this to my fastest clock ratio. I believe Module 4 adds a nice finishing touch to the patch by adding more rhythm. In conclusion, I believe that I was creative with the setup of my patch, taking into account the range of tones, speed and shape of the modules. However, I think next time I could widen the range of modulars I used, as well as take a different approach with the foundations of the patch. For example, try to use and or logic gates.